Hi, this is Billie Beene here with a world news update. Today's date, April 5, 2024, time about 10 a.m. in Texas, episode 145. Some of the things we'll be covering will be 1. The Middle East. Tea attack to come upon the United States in association with the Eclipse and the release of a bioweapon. And number 2, the shadow U.S. military NATO setup in Israel and Iran. They really want World War III. And number 3, NATO to seize or attempt to try to seize control of the U.S. military before President Trump is back in. And I'd like to say thank you for additional support for my channel to Kim C. and Becky D. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to begin with some breaking news. Now, we've been hearing April 8, we're having a historic eclipse over the U.S. So here's the U.S. In 2017, we had one eclipse. Coming up Monday, we have a second eclipse, April 8, 2024. And we, the people that's going through 7 locations, Nineveh, so time to repent for sure. The 2017 eclipse went through many cities called Salem, which is, according to the Bible, peace. So I believe we in America are to pursue peace, repent, and pursue peace. Now, we've been seeing very bizarre things going on in the U.S. with regard to the eclipse. The National Guard called out warnings for power grid and cell phones and internet and planes in the air. And no one knew exactly why. Now, JWTV has some sources and brought this out that some type of bioweapon was going to be released on the people who were millions coming into this area of the U.S. on April 8. And these bioweapons were going to be released by plane. Now, Mike from around the world is regularly on Pastor Paul Begley's Thursday night program. We believe Mike works, we know he works for the government, NSA, FEMA, one of those groups. Now, he's bringing concrete information out that Middle East terrorist, most likely trained and funded by the shadow U.S. CIA. And we know that since January of 2021, the JB show has let in millions of terrorists from many nations around the world. Mike says that many of these Middle Eastern terrorists are going to receive injections of a specific type of toxin. Then they're going to circulate among the millions of Americans grouped together to watch the eclipse, and that symptoms will vary with individuals. After the eclipse, people will begin to have symptoms in 7 days, 20 days, 30 days. And that once the symptoms begin, you will most likely die within 3 days. That's how toxic this specific poison is. Now, the Middle Eastern terrorists, they're suicide-oriented individuals who have been brainwashed in many ways. Oh, and we'd like to say a special shout out to Serbia, and thanks so much for hosting Hunter Biden November 1 through 5 of 2020, when a certain group inside Serbia, swift on their computer keys, were aligning certain results from the D machines used in association with the last presidential election. Shout out to Serbia. And oh, the American people are making a list, checking it twice, gonna find out who's naughty or nice. And for me, I say to these individuals in Serbia and other nations, give your heart to Jesus, lest you find yourself quickly and suddenly en route to hell. So that's going on. Oh, and David Nino Rodriguez this morning says the National Guard is now activating to be in all 50 states, not just the states hosting the eclipse, along the eclipse path. So we see we do have good parts of the U.S. government who are taking this very real threat to the American people seriously. Okay, now we'll talk about what's going on in Israel and Iran. And I have a Patriot subscriber. I had put out that information that Iran, so we have Mexico, we have the U.S., we have South America, Venezuela, that Iran had set up intercontinental ballistic missiles. These are conventional missiles, not nukes, in Venezuela, pointed at the U.S. should the U.S. military help Israel when Iran makes their strikes inside Israel to pay Israel back for Israel bombing the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria on Monday, April 1. Now, those planes, I believe they were F-35s from Israel, went through Jordan and went through the U.S. military bases located in Jordan and on the edge of Syria. And it's believed that the shadow part of the U.S. military provided the guidance system for those planes to hit the Iranian embassy. Yeah, all governments and all militaries have been infiltrated by the deep state and have a shadow part of government, shadow part of the military. This does not apply to the people of America, nor to the people of Israel, nor to the people of other nations. I began by saying we're going to have suicide individuals from the Middle East trying to spread toxins in the U.S. Does that come from the people of the Middle Eastern nations? No. This group most likely was funded, trained, and put in place by the shadow U.S. CIA and the shadow U.S. State Department. So that's going on. We have enemies inside our gate, as all nations do. So it's good to identify them and possibly put them on their route to hell. And I say, give your heart to Jesus before that happens. Okay. So Iran then, after April 1, and the U.S. aided and Israel dropping of bombs on the Iranian embassy, and Iran activating their missiles in Venezuela toward the U.S. with a range of 3,500 miles. They can reach almost all of the U.S. except Washington State, Oregon, and Northern California. So, I have a Patriot subscriber who says, you know, the U.S. is locked and loaded with anti-ballistic missiles inside Israel. And we see these frequently in Israel. So this Patriot subscriber is inside Israel. And we know that the shadow U.S. military and the shadow U.S. government definitely is providing the missiles and the bullets to kill now in Gaza. I believe the number is up to 33,000. So that's going on. And I agree with my Patriot subscriber. Yes, we, the American people, are awake. And we do not condone the use of U.S. weapons and bullets in genocide, which is what we see going on in Gaza. Now, Hal Turner, April 4, yesterday, Israel was mobilizing long-range missiles along its border here. And should Iran strike a retaliation for its embassy being fired upon, which we know universally is an act of war. And I have a Patriot subscriber who says, nukes in the U.S. Okay, we can shoot down nukes or other missiles coming in. I believe this Patriot subscriber was referring to the information I put out about the Iranian missiles in Venezuela pointed at the U.S. And we can take them down with lasers. And this Patriot subscriber has information about 70-plus suitcase nukes missing inside the U.S., and I have heard in the past Dr. William Mount give similar information. So this Patriot subscriber is giving a scenario. Say you have a dump truck filled with metal pieces and 2+ suitcase nukes. And example, they could detonate in an overpass on a freeway like 195, 175 east to west. And there would be a permanent closing of the freeway, homes and businesses in that area due to radioactivity. And this Patriot subscriber says this scenario is much more likely than missiles hitting the U.S. So that's going on. My Patriot subscribers know a lot of stuff. And now we have this. Okay, so we've got this set up in the Middle East now. And U.S. NI News says a Chinese tanker was hit by the Houthis. That was a few days ago. The MV Hang Pu. That happened on March 24, and there was a small damage to the tanker. And on February 22nd, we see a Chinese destroyer in the Gulf of Aden. Now, some months ago, Iran, China, and Russia, who have security agreements, have put in place Chinese ships and Russian ships. So the Russian ships and 2 of the Chinese ships are in the Red Sea. In the Strait of Hormuz, adjacent to Iran, I believe are still 4 Chinese vessels. Now, after the Israel attacked the Iranian embassy on Monday, Russia sent 2 of their warships, and Russia also has an armored brigade and tanks in the Golan Heights, which is often referred to as the West Bank. Now, currently, Russian troops and tanks are in the part of the Golan Heights still recognized to be in the hands of Syria, and it is disputed that this West Bank is a part of Israel. Many nations see Israel as being an occupier in both the West Bank and in Gaza. So that's going on. And now from the Jerusalem Post, Thursday, March 28, 2 Russian warships are in the Red Sea. They've passed the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. It's the cruiser Varyag and the frigate Marshal Shaponikov. So that's going on. Now we have Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, a few days ago, was kicked out of Israel, as were other foreign journalists. Israel doesn't want freedom of the press in Israel. So they were kicked out April 2nd, as were other foreign journalists. And we have this. Russia took down the electronic systems in all of the Middle East. That happened a couple of days ago. GPS, IDF, the Israeli military radio frequencies, and other electronic comms systems. And we have this. We have a terror group, Jaish al-Adi, and they were on the border of Iran, that's adjacent to Afghanistan and Pakistan. And they killed this terror group that came out of Afghanistan, Pakistan. On April 4, killed 11 Iranian Revolutionary Guard individuals near Chabakar Rask. So that's going on. We see the shadow CIA and the shadow NATO busy, don't we? Daily Mail. Yeah. Okay. So a few days ago, we had 7 individuals killed who were delivering food in Gaza. Now, it's universally recognized that this was not an accident on the part of Israel. I submit this goes along with Israel's doctrine with regard to the Palestinians: kill them or starve them. So we had 7 individuals with, they were in cars, and they were from a kitchen group, World Central Kitchen Group, and they had on their vehicles, on the side, on the top, lit up signs with their names on them. Their route had been pre-approved by the IDF, both in time and route. And let's be clear, as soon as I heard about the details, I also assumed this was a direct attack by Israel upon the aid workers, because it involved drones hitting, I think it was 3 vehicles. Well, to get drones somewhere, you have someone sitting at a computer, remote controlling them. That could not have been an accident. Now, Scott Ritter is vehement, a retired Marine U.S. military analyst, that it could not have been an accident. And the UN is also condemning it. Yep. So that's going on. Israel is not being supported by nations on a global basis now. Now I have a good analysis by New Atlas, came out this morning. The UN condemns the attack on the humanitarian aid workers, and the U.S. is refraining from condemning the attack by Israel on the Iranian embassy, and the U.S. is claiming, well, we don't know which buildings were hit. Well, it's globally was released as soon as the hit was made on video around the world, and it clearly showed a compound with the Iranian embassy and Attached to that is the annex and the residence of the Iranian ambassador. But the U.S. says we can't confirm which buildings were hit. All right, but John Kirby, spokesperson for the U.S., says that Israel attacked Iran's embassy. And we see New Atlas is taking this and makes this analysis, and I also add my own information. The shadow U.S. government military for years has been fomenting a war with Iran. And I submit this has to do with Iran and their oil and their gold and their desire to break from the deep state central banking system and to aid in ginning up a war. The JB, also a deep state operative, has released billions of dollars to Iran in 2023 and 2024. Now, this was Iranian money that was frozen, but it's being put forth by analysts that JB released the money so Iran had extra money to go to war, because the shadow U.S. military, the shadow U.S. government, the shadow NATO, they want World War III. So this is going on. Now, also, the U.S. to Israel, one day after the aid workers were killed, it was 7 individuals from different nations, including the UK, Australia, and 1 American citizen. So one day after that happened, the JB Deep State Show in the U.S. released thousands of bombs to Israel. So that's going on. And now we have this. So we see a setup here in the Middle East, and we're on the edge of, I believe, a genuine conflict breaking out. Iran has yet to attack Israel inside Israel. Now, there was one small report by Hal Turner that it appeared some type of objects came from the direction of Iran into Iraq. That was later identified as meteors. So we've got that additional space event going on. Planet X or Nibiru also will be bringing in space debris. So the world is on edge. And we have currently in the Gulf of Aden 6 Chinese warships. We have in the Red Sea 2 Russian warships, 2 Chinese warships. And we have thousands of U.S. military in Qatar, some in Kuwait and UAE. Now, UAE just cut off diplomatic ties with Israel, which raised the price of oil to $90 a barrel. So we need to be in prayer for the U.S., for the people of Israel, and for the people of the Middle East. Now, those deep state terrorists, I believe when President Trump is back, we need to send out precision-guided missiles to hit their headquarters wherever they are in the Middle East, to rid the earth of evil that could come against the United States of America, as well as evil that foments inside the Middle Eastern nations, because these groups routinely attack different we just saw the humanitarian aid workers killed. So we see a lot of evil going on. So that's going on. So currently the Middle East is on a countdown, it appears, to retaliation by Iran against Israel. Now we'll talk about Russia. We'll talk about Ukraine. We'll talk about a NATO that's obviously on the path of insanity. So now we've got Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Germany, France. Yeah, it appears the deep states really lost their mind. Okay, this is information today, April 5, coming from a Polish general that and a former Ministry of Defense person in Poland, Waldemar Skrzak, that the NATO nations, NATO, not government nations, they want a draft in all NATO nations. Well, good luck with that. By November of 2024, the United States is going to have a new sheriff in town. And most likely we'll be recalling our military back to the U.S. to rebuild the U.S. and help us expel millions of illegals and terrorists from around the world. But NATO wants a draft in all NATO nations and to establish a military corridor in Europe so it's easier to move troops and equipment. And I have this coming from Martin Armstrong and his predictive Socrates software, that Russia currently has a military strength of 4.5 million. And in the past year, Russia has conscripted 300,000. Now, the open figure on the size of Russia's military is 2.5 million. So I was surprised by Martin's number, 4.5 million. And an estimate of the military strength of Europe is 300,000. This is coming from War News 24/7 and Martin Armstrong. And NATO wants to push Russia. So we know we recently had that attack in Moscow, that T attack on the concert hall. It's now coming out that was aided and abetted, planned and paid for by the shadow US, the shadow UK, Ukraine, and France. And now Europe wants to create a military corridor. So we have the Netherlands up here. And also NATO in Germany, we have Ramstein U.S. military base. And NATO, right now, they want to take command and control of Ramstein and all the U.S. military there because they fear President Trump returning to office. And so we see the ships in this corridor would go through the Netherlands, Poland, the Baltic states, and Romania. And this is news. Romania has signed an agreement. Romania is going to put troops into Moldova and Odessa. And it's been announced by Macron that French troops would also be here. So we have the French and the Romanians who are advertising where they're going to be. Yeah. And NATO wants to implement the drafting in all NATO nations within the next few months. So that's going on. And now we have this from Ukraine social media. yesterday. So this is being put forth. The U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan worries that Russia will nuke the U.S. in a first strike if the U.S. gives more money to Ukraine. And we see Ukraine actually making threats via social media against the U.S. Send us money. And hey, Zelensky just bought a $20 million mansion in Hollywood. So, Sullivan believes Russia will strike the U.S. first if Ukraine gets more money, and this is per the House Representative McCall. March 20, U.S. media. Sullivan asked, okay, this is news. So on March 20, the U.S., according to U.S. media, Sullivan, the National Security Advisor for the U.S., asked Ukraine to abstain from direct attacks in Russia. Then 2 days later, we saw the Ukraine, U.S., UK, and France shadow groups backing the terrorist who killed now up to 160 civilians in the Crocus Concert Hall in a tea attack. So we see 2 days before this, according to U.S. media, Sullivan puts out in the U.S. media that the U.S. has asked Ukraine to abstain from attacks in Russia. Was that a CIA move? We have to wonder. And now we have from the Telegraph. So we have down in this area, we've got Denmark. Now, Denmark is several islands. And then between the two islands, a few days ago, Denmark set up a NOTAM, no planes and no ships, because certain weapons were being tested in this area. Yeah, so we have Denmark. Actually, Denmark would be up in this area adjacent to Sweden. Denmark. So we see that going on. We know Steadfast Defender is still going on. All right. That's an NATO exercise. And we have this. France, from War News 24/7. So France is going to send 1,500 troops. They've already activated them. And France, for some reason, said, yeah, they're either going through Poland, but I suspect they're going through Romania. And they've announced they're going to Odessa. Macron, NATO will not, and Macron, the leader of France, has said, even though France is a member of NATO, and France is going to send in troops here, NATO is not going to get involved. It will not activate Article 5. Article 5 is an attack upon one NATO nation activates the defense of all other NATO nations. Well, this is a NATO nation going in without an agreement with NATO to fight against Russia. And Russia has said once the French troops are inside Ukraine fighting against Russia, they become a legitimate military target. And it's noted these French troops are going into Odessa, and it's believed the next major objective for Russia is going to be Kharkiv and Odessa. And we see the French troops being sent in to a potential hot shooting kinetic war situation without air cover. So, yeah, these leaders need to be replaced. They're not working in the best interest of the people of the nation. Now, Hal Turner brings this out. The U.S. is pre-positioned military equipment. So the U.S., so we've got Ukraine here, and we've got the Middle East. So what the U.S. has done is put out like ships, like halfway between the Middle East and Ukraine, with 1,500 pieces of equipment on the USNS Cheriton, and it's been deployed. This is a station that can enable the U.S. military to rapidly deploy to either Eastern Europe or the Middle East. And now we have this. NATO preps to send troops. And the troops are coming in from Germany, Poland, France, Romania, to send their troops inside Ukraine to fight against Russia. NATO